What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio and welcome to Statistics for UFC Las Vegas. We have Merab Dvalishvili going against Petr Yan. We have 13 fights on this card, and like all of March, really good fights. Really good fights here. Really good main card, especially. We got Nikita, Krylov, Ryan Spann, a fight we were supposed to watch a couple weeks ago on the card. So, yeah, another card that I'm really looking forward to. As always, we're here with Weezy, a day late, but here nonetheless. Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to this card for Saturday?
Yeah, a day late, but hopefully not $1 short this week. You know, let's find some ways to make some money on this card. I'm looking forward to it. It's a fun one, you know, because we've had a lot of Vegas cards that are Apex cards, which means that the newly corporate UFC doesn't have to give a shit and they can just feed us whatever they want to. But this is going to be at the Virgin Hotel, so this is going to be in front of a live audience. They're going to need to actually care about selling tickets, and the card that we're getting is indicative of that. So this is a good thing. We got a lot better name value on this card. We've got the return of the Pleasure Man. We've got Victor Henry with his beautiful head of hair back in the house. You know, they redid the Volkov Spann fight, which was going to be a main event. And now that's the third fight on this card. Romanov, Volkov, Yan Dvalishvili, Said Nurmagomedov versus Jonathan Martinez. There are some great fights on this card, and I'm really looking forward to breaking it down with you in the chat, man. And Brady just back from Vegas. So for those of you who know what that's like, you know, going to Vegas for 48 to 72 hours and then flying back home and then trying to go to work that night, you know, let's see what Brady's got left in the tank for us tonight. But what he has left, I'm going to have a little bit more because I was at home just like going over these fights for the last few days. I didn't have to get on any planes. I wasn't in Vegas. So, you know, I'm ready to rock.
Dude, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning today, and I just got home an hour ago. like, come on. Spirit Airlines, get some help. Delays, layovers, it was rough, man, but it was worth it. I really wanted to go and see UFC 285. Was able to go see it, have some fun, make some money, so it was worth it. But yeah, those trips, they take a lot out of you.
Yeah, I remember, man. I've been to Vegas my share of times, and I never came back stronger than when I left.
Yeah, usually I need like a couple days to recover. So me being on this stream, it's kind of a miracle, but did not want to miss it. Did not want to push it back any more than we already did. What is up, everybody in the chat? If you guys can, please leave a like, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Me and Weezy go live typically every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. Also be sure to become a member here at Pub Sports Radio, and also be sure to join the contest we do Saturday, week in, week out. Free money, $100 the first. It's basically like a Tapology predictions. You give your prediction, the round, the method. Whoever gets first place gets $100. That is on pubsportsradio.com. You go to contest, so be sure to check that out. But Weezy, I say we get into it. We have 13 fights. We did lose the Carlston Harris fight, which kind of sucks. We're really looking forward to seeing the return of Carlston Harris after a pretty big layoff. But we will start with the first fight of the card. We have Bruno Silva going against Tyson Nam. So we'll start with Silva. He is 32 years old, 5'4", with a 65-inch reach. We got Tyson Nam. He is 39 years old, 5'7", with a 68-inch reach. We have Silva, who's going to be much younger, 7 years younger. We got Tyson Nam, who's going to have both a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. Tyson Nam, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Had a decision loss to Kai Kara France, a knockout win against Zaruk Adashev, a knockout win against Jerome Rivera, a decision loss to Matt Schnell, and then a knockout win against Ode Osborne. As far as Bruno Silva, he is 2-2 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights. Had that no contest against Khalid Taha, had a decision loss to David Dvorak, had a decision loss to Dagir Ulanbekov, and then bounced back with 2 wins here against JP Bays by knockout, and then Victor Rodriguez by knockout. So Weezy, should be a fun fight here to kick off the card. Tyson Nam, 39 years old at flyweight, still going out there and getting it done. What do you think about this fight here, Weezy?
Yeah, 17-year career for Tyson Nam, 34 fights, 21-12, 370 minutes in the pro cage. And he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage here, a 3-inch height advantage here. And he's finished all of his UFC wins by knockout, just like Bruno Silva has. So it's going to be interesting here because when you watch Tyson Nam, he's really been fighting the same way pretty much the entirety of his career. He's a counter striker. He's got a big right hand, and he tries to knock his opponents out. You know, he's 7-9-1 in decisions in his career. So, you know, he's mediocre at winning minutes at best. And he's 0-3 at the UFC level against higher level fighters in decisions. But he is finishing a lot of his wins by knockout. 62% of his wins coming by way of knockout, and he's only got one win by way of submission. So Tyson's low volume, and you can see it here when you look at those distance striking stats on the screen. He's throwing 11.1, but his opponents are throwing 16.05 distance strikes per minute at distance here, and he's getting outlanded by more than 2 distance strikes per minute. So this guy is waiting for the big shot, and he gets that big shot. He finds it. He's got 3 knockdowns in 6 UFC fights, and all 3 of those knockdowns resulted in knockout finishes. So Tyson is showing good takedown defense at the UFC level. He's showed 100% takedown defense on 4 takedowns attempts against, and it's really good to see somebody like Bruno Silva, who's going to bring a commitment to the wrestling in the cage, because now we're going to really test Tyson Nam's takedown defense here. You know, he's going up against guys like Ode Osborne, Matt Schnell, Jerome Rivera, Zaruk Adeshev, Kai Kara-France, and I believe before that it was Sergio Pettis. And in those guys don't really wrestle much, but Bruno Silva's got 32 takedown attempts in only 5 UFC fights. He's gotten 10 of them. He's averaging just under 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he's out-controlling his opponents 28.4% to 12.9%. So he's winning about 69% of the control time positions that he's in. And he's that's a 2.2 to 1 ratio here. When we look at the strength of schedule, though, neither one of these guys is beating anybody of any significance here. Tyson Nam's got 3 wins, but their combined record at the UFC level is 5 wins and 10 losses. And for Bruno Silva, he's got 2 wins. They're both by knockout, but they're against guys that are 0-5 in the UFC. So neither one of these guys is a world beater. You know, you stack up the wins next to each other, and you kind of want to puke. Zaruk Adeshev, Jerome Rivera, Ode Osborne, JP Bays, and Victor Rodriguez. So, I mean, but here's the thing, Brady. Bruno does more on the feet. He's active more there. He throws more punches, and he's going to be mixing in those wrestling attempts, trying to get the fight to the ground. Tyson Nam is like the definition of a puncher's chance up here. And Bruno Silva's got power of his own. We've seen it on display in the Rodriguez fight, in the Bays fight. This guy's getting knockdowns. He's landing big shots. So I kind of feel like Bruno's got Tyson covered everywhere. He's younger. He's a lot busier in the grappling. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's training his wrestling with Henry Cejudo over at Fight Ready. So I kind of feel like Bruno's well-rounded MMA game is going to be too much for a guy like Tyson Nam that just waits to counter with one big right hand and win fights by winning a moment, but losing all the minutes up until that moment. So I think Tyson Nam's 100% takedown defense is going to get tested here. I think he's going to be put into a fight where he could potentially gas out. And Tyson, before the Victor Rodriguez fight, had taken over a year and off and rehabbed a completely torn ACL at the age of almost 39 at the time that happened. So, yeah, man, I'm going with Bruno Silva here. And dude, how about seeing the Carrillo back in the chat, Brady? We haven't seen F. Carrillo in a minute. Good to see him. Welcome back, F. Carrillo. Always good to see you here, supporting the show, supporting Pub Sports Radio. We appreciate you. But, man, I'm picking Bruno Silva, and I'm picking him to win this one by decision because Tyson Nam is incredibly durable. Only been finished 3 times in 34 fights, and I believe the last time he was finished, Brady, 2013 by Marlon Moraes.
Long time ago. I like it. Yeah, speaking of Carrillo, with the $5 super sticker, appreciate you. Carrillo said he did well on the prize picks. There you go. Love to see it. Shout out to F. Carrillo for the dono there. Yeah, I mean, Tyson Nam has like a very interesting strategy at flyweight. I mean, going out there and just not doing much, but hitting very, very hard. And I think that's why the dude has like 12 losses throughout his career. He's not a minute winner, he's a minute winner. So yeah, if he wins this fight, it's probably gonna be by knockout, but you can't favor Tyson Nam in this matchup. Silva has all the grappling upside, probably higher volume on the feet. I think Silva's definitely the rightful favorite, and I think that's why we see money coming in on him. Interestingly enough, Weezy, Silva opened up as an underdog, which is very interesting to me. He opened up plus 130, and now he's minus 200. Tyson Nam opened up minus 150. He's now plus 170. So it looks like money's pouring in on Silva, and it makes a lot of sense to me. It's hard to trust a 39-year-old Tyson Nam to go out there and land a big shot. If he does not land that big shot, he's going to clearly lose minutes in this fight. See, I like Silva as well. Would have loved that plus 130, right? But minus 200 seems about right to me. I think he should win this fight. And I'm with you, probably by decision as well. Maybe if he is able to get the grappling going, he can potentially get a submission, but I'm kind of leaning the decision route myself.
Yeah, and I mean, even Tyson Nam in 34 fights has never been submitted. And the dude does have, he was known coming into the UFC. They're like, this dude's tough to take down. He wants to keep fights standing. His fights have stayed standing in the UFC 87% of the total cage time. So he's really good at doing what he does. He keeps fights standing. He waits to counter and land that big right hand. And of those 21 wins that he has, you're talking about 13 of them coming by way of knockout. So that's really impressive. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight. But I'm happy to see Bruno Silva back here. I'm a fan of his, and I think he brings a really exciting style and a well-rounded mixed martial arts game. So this is going to be a fun way to start off the card.
Absolutely. All right, let us move on to the next fight. We got Victor Henry going against Tony Gravely. We got Victor Henry, 35 years old, 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. Tony Gravely, 31 years old, 5'5" with a 69-inch reach. We got Gravely is going to be 4 years younger. He's going to be at a 2-inch height disadvantage, but he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage here. So Victor Henry is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Hany Barcelos, won that fight by decision, and then lost his last fight last time out against Raphael Assunção by decision. Tony Gravely is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win against Anthony Burchak, a knockout loss against Nate Maness, a decision win against Simon Oliveira, a knockout win against Johnny Munoz, and then a decision loss to Javid Basharat. And you were telling me a couple days ago, Victor Henry is one of those guys like a Abdulrazak Al-Hassan who's just on the unbettable list for Uncle Weezy. It's just hard to, and I agree, it's hard to get a read on this guy. I mean, he comes in against Barcelos as a massive underdog. Like Barcelos was like minus 500 something. And Victor Henry goes out there and puts on a performance of a lifetime, Weezy. And then in the next fight, everybody's hyped up on Victor Henry. Everybody's excited about the guy. And then he goes out there and loses to a 39-year-old bantamweight and Raphael Assunção as a big favorite. So thus far in the UFC, it's like he had a really, really good performance against Barcelos, and then he had a really bad performance against a 39-year-old Raphael Assunção. So hard to get a good read on the guy, but, he's a solid fighter. I like the volume out of Victor Henry. Takedown defense is okay. Get-up game's very good. He's going to want to keep it on the feet here against Tony Gravely. We know what Gravely's going to do at this point. Going to try to take him down and take him down a lot. So it's a very interesting matchup stylistically, but again, it's hard to get a good read on Victor Henry outside of he has a very interesting haircut. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight here?
Yeah, I mean, Victor Henry versus Hany Barcelos attempted 352 significant strikes. He landed 181 in 15 minutes, 222 total strikes. Barcelos attempted 7 takedowns, and Victor Henry attempted 1. And despite that fact, Victor Henry outcontrolled Hany Barcelos 1:37 to 15 seconds. It was such an amazing performance. It left me slack-jawed. It left my pockets lighter. And it left me absolutely blown away that Victor Henry could come in, what was originally scheduled for as a short notice fight, then was put back a couple of weeks. And then, you see Hany Barcelos and you think, oh man, he must be washed up letting Victor Henry go out and do that to him. And then Barcelos looks rejuvenated the next time out against Trevin Jones and just shaves his ass for the full 3 rounds and puts on a clinic. And it's like, oh my God, What is Victor Henry going to do to a 39-year-old bantamweight who's on a 4-fight losing streak? What's he going to do? He's going to lose convincingly, Brady. He's, and like we're sitting here, I've got Henry in a parlay, and I know it's over after one round. I'm like, holy shit, he couldn't stop the takedowns, and Assunção is landing every counter shot that he throws, and Victor's not ready for this. He's got no plan B. So, and I just want to say, Victor Henry, if you use steroids for the Barcelos fight, I think that the MMA community would forgive you if you just came out and told us what it was that you did so that the rest of us mortals could try it just once. Because I would go back to doing drugs, hard drugs, if it could make me turn into Victor Henry against Hani Barcelos just for one night. I want to perform like that just for like 5 minutes in the rest of my life. I want to have one 5-minute stretch where I perform like Victor Henry did in the cage against Hani Barcelos. I mean, if they couldn't have tested his pee. If they did, it would have been glowing like plutonium, and it would have actually melted through whatever cup that he would have pissed in, even if it was made of steel. I don't know what happened that night, Brady. What happened that night? That was craziness. And then he loses to Assunção. So, look, you guys can see the stats on the screen. If you can't see them, you can subscribe to my Patreon for the low price of $5 a month and check them out. These stats mean nothing because we don't know which version of Victor Henry is showing up. But Tony Gravely can wrestle. We've seen Victor Henry on tape, especially against Lavrentiev, and in the fight, the Kanahara fight, he lost the entire first round, pinned on his back. Tony Gravely has attempted 64 takedowns in 72 minutes in the UFC cage. He's getting 6.19 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's got a 47% takedown accuracy, and he's out-controlling his opponents 47% to 16%. That's like a 3-to-1 ratio. He's winning 75% of the control time positions that he's in. And he's doing it against solid competition. But once again, it's the wins for Tony Gravely. He's got 4 UFC wins. And the combined records of those guys are 5 UFC wins and 10 UFC losses. So it's kind of like Gravely's out there losing to like good guys, right? He lost to Nate Maness. He lost to Javid Basharat. He's beating Johnny Munoz Jr., Simon Oliveira, Burchak. 5 wins combined amongst those 4 guys that he's beaten, and a couple of them were wins by Burchak back in 2013. So, I mean, this is just going to be a stay away from me. But Victor Henry, I think the key stats, Brady, look at Gravely's numbers at distance, right? He lands 4.84, but absorbs 7.5. So he's a minute loser on the feet. He's a minute loser who can win moments. But Victor Henry was getting blasted in the face by Hani Barcelos, and he ate every one of those shots. He rolled with them, ate them like a flapjack, and returned. So I think as long as this fight stays on the feet, Victor Henry wins the minutes. If Gravely is able to get his wrestling game going and be able to do that for 10 to 12 minutes, he can win a decision here. But I don't think anybody's finishing Victor Henry. I think the finish-only prop on Victor Henry is -200, and that's because he's never been finished in 28 fights, while Tony Gravely has been finished in 6 of his 8 losses. So, I think Victor Henry can win the minutes here on the feet especially. Gravely can win the minutes on the ground, but I think Victor Henry's got the better conditioning, and I think he's got really good catch wrestling, having trained with under Josh Barnett for years. So it's a very interesting fight. I'm not even making a prediction, but I think that the stats tell a very interesting story.
Yep, all going to come down to whether Gravely can take down Henry and hold him down long enough to get that decision. Because, like you said, he's not finishing Henry, especially if he is on something like Tiger Blood. You're not finishing anybody on nothing like Tiger Blood, nothing like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably dog or pass. I think it's a close fight. If Victor Henry is able to stuff the takedowns, he probably makes it look too easy, pretty easy here. But if Gravely is able to get the wrestling going, he can also make it look, pretty easy as well. So I kind of lean the dog money on Gravely. Don't know if I'm going to get there yet. No real interest in the fight goes or doesn't go. Any interest in any totals here for you, Weezy? I mean, it's juiced to the fight goes like minus 170.
Yeah, the durability you can count on of Victor Henry, and you can count on Tony Gravely finding a way out of fights when he's unable to push the pace that is necessary to wrestle for 15 minutes. So I think the time props are also landmines here because you have to worry about which version of Victor Henry is showing up. If it's the version that was against Assunção, this thing's going the distance. If it's the version that was in there against Barcelos, he's finishing Gravely the first chance he gets.
Yep, we're gonna have to find out. But yeah, I think that Barcelos performance was a one-off. Like I've never seen that out of Victor Henry. But if that Victor Henry does show up, he's going to wipe the floor with Tony Gravely. I mean, that was an incredible performance by him there. Let us move on to the next fight, though. We have JJ Aldrich going against Ariana Lipski. We got Aldrich, 30 years old, 5'5" with a 67-inch reach. Lipski, 29 years old, 5'6" with a 67-inch reach. We have Lipski 1 year younger, with a 1-inch height advantage, same reach there. Lipski, she is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, had a submission win against Luana Carolina, a knockout loss against Antonina Shevchenko, a knockout loss to Montana De La Rosa, a decision win against Mandy Bum, and then a knockout loss to Priscilla Cachoeira. As far as JJ Aldrich, she is 3-2 in her last 5 fights, decision loss against Sabina Mazo, a decision win against Courtney Casey, Vanessa Demopoulos, Jillian Robertson, and then a submission loss to Erin Blanchfield her last time out. Yep, Weezy. So I have no really interest in betting this fight, but as far as a pick, I do lean towards JJ Aldrich. I think she's pretty underrated, honestly. I think her striking solid. I like the volume, pretty good takedown defense, underrated grappling. I think she should be able to keep this on the feet for the most part and probably outstrike Lipski across 3 rounds. The problem for me, Weezy, we were talking about it before the show, is the price tag. We see JJ Aldrich, I think she's like minus like something crazy, minus 370 right now, minus 369. And I'm just not in the business of laying minus 370 on JJ Aldrich. So it's a fight I want nothing to do with. I'm not going to bet it. I might not even watch it. But yeah, I think Aldrich should get this fight done. But when we're talking about betting, like laying minus 370 on JJ Aldrich, like what could go wrong? And the answer to that is a lot can go wrong at minus 370. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight here?
Yeah, if you're thinking of laying minus 380 on JJ Aldrich, please just go back and watch the Sabina Mazo fight. She lost that fight. She got out-volumed by an absolute ton. And there's some really telling statistics for this fight that should only be used to talk you out of parlaying a minus 380 favorite in a women's fight. What could possibly go wrong, right? Because all juiced women's favorites cover, right, Brady?
All of them, even Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah. I mean, even though she lost that fight, your bookie probably refunded you your money and was like, yeah, that she should have won that. We're going to give you your money back. But sometimes that's not how it works, right? So you got to be careful in case this is the first ever juiced women's favorite that screws up under the bright lights, and if that does happen, you're going to be very, very disappointed. And look, these statistics are kind of telling, right? JJ Aldrich at distance, and I'm just using these distance striking numbers, which are below the significant striking numbers, 10.63 significant strike attempts per minute at distance, while her opponents are throwing 14.12. So JJ throws a lot less volume than her opponents do. And she lands less volume than her opponents do. This is a woman with 11 fights, and she's won 7 of them. But she's losing. She's getting landed on more at distance, more, than she lands on her opponents. Very troubling. And then you look at Lipski. Lipski lands more than she absorbs. She's throwing 17.6 significant strike attempts per minute at distance. Her opponents are throwing 13.39. So even though JJ's a lot more efficient, she's 42% accurate. She's got 65% striking defense. So she is a gifted boxer. She's accurate when she throws. She's defensively sound when she's not. And but she doesn't land with power, but she also doesn't absorb big shots. She's never been knocked down in the UFC, and that's absorbing 684 significant strikes. But the thing about Lipski is she's got power. She's got legit power for the flyweight division. She has landed 3 knockdowns in 8 UFC fights. So if this fight takes place at distance for most of the fight, and Ariane Lipski is throwing more, if she's landing slightly more and she's landing the bigger shots, JJ Aldrich probably doesn't look, minus 380. But JJ, you have to be really kind of looking into the numbers to see that she's very good when she is standing. That 65% striking defense at distance is very good. The 42% striking accuracy at distance is very good. And then you look at the grappling numbers. JJ has attempted 24 takedowns. Her opponents have attempted 29. But yet JJ's out-controlling her opponents at a 1.81 to 1 ratio. She's got 16.6% control time. Her opponents have 9. So she's very efficient. She's, attempting less takedowns than her opponents, but still out-controlling them at a 2 to 1 ratio. And she spends about 25 to 26% of her fights in control time positions for or against. If you look at the strength of schedule numbers, they lean Aldrich, but not by much, man. I'm telling you, dude, this one reeks of an apple pie shitter, to quote our guy Cody Saftik. That this is not a juice that I would be laying. And, Lipski does have power, but Lipski's wins are not impressive either. She's got 3 wins in the UFC, and the combined records of those opponents: 3 wins, 5 losses, one of them against Mandy Bohm, one of them against Luana Carolina, and the other one was against Isabella de Padua.
Well, Thomas thinks that JJ is going to shave some ass on this card.
Well, she doesn't really shave ass. She's never finished a fight.
Some ass.
What's that?
She could decision some ass, maybe.
Yes, she can absolutely decision some ass. She is 7-2 in her record in decisions. And I think all of that, Brady, is a function of those things that we just talked about. The grappling efficiency, the good striking defense, the good distance striking accuracy. Even though she throws less volume, even though she lands a little bit less, she's landing the slightly bigger shots, and she's winning the grappling exchanges that do happen. So, I see why she's the favorite. She absolutely should be the favorite.
Oh, yeah.
But I think anything more than minus 200 is just a little bit weird.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. Maybe JJ Aldrich throws like a random spinning kick, and Lipski takes the back instantly and chokes her out shortly after. You never know.
But we've never seen that happen, Brady. You've never seen that happen.
No.
Right?
No.
Well, it hasn't happened today, we should say.
No.
It hasn't happened today.
Nothing can go wrong with JJ Aldrich. Just put her in your parlays and you should be good. Minus 369, man.
But nothing that Hewitt is saying in the chat is wrong.
No, he's
Ariane Lipski's pretty awful as a UFC fighter. She's like the definition of a puncher's chance with not much of a ground game. That weird-ass knee bar she got against Luana Carolina was mind-boggling. But outside of that, yeah. I mean, JJ should absolutely get the job done here. But, man, it's going to hurt if she doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game. Lipski can be awful all we want, but JJ Aldrich not some world beater. So, I mean, yeah, she should win, but I'm just not laying minus 370 is what I'm saying.
Yeah, me neither.
Never, ever. Pass. Big, giant pass. All right, we'll move on to the next fight then. We have Mario Batista going against Guido Canetti. We got Batista, 29 years old, 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. Canetti, 44 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. We got Mario Batista, much younger, 14 years younger to be exact. We have Mario Batista with also a 3-inch height advantage and a 2 or a 1-inch reach advantage. Mario Batista is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Miles Johns. Knockout loss against Trevin Jones. Decision win against Jay Perrin. Submission win against Brian Kelleher. Benito Lopez, submission win as well. As far as Guido Canetti, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights: a submission win against Marlon Vera, a knockout win against Sanat Bakary, a decision loss to Mana Martinez, a knockout win against Chris Moutinho, and then a submission win against Randy Costa. So as far as I'm concerned, Weezy, I think Guido Canetti is currently the oldest fighter on the roster, because I think Oleinik is either cut or retired, right?
Yeah. The Olympics done for sure with
Oleinik's
the
done.
UFC. Yeah, I think he was on the last fight of his deal, and he was 44, I think. So
Yeah, I think so. I think Canetti's the oldest fighter. I know Arlovsky's up there as well, but yeah, and he's a bantamweight, which is crazy, and he's still getting wins. I know it's against Randy Costa and Chris Moutinho, but see him go out there at 42, 43 years old and still get wins at bantamweight is very impressive. But man, he's running into Mario Batista here. Mario Batista, I think this guy's the real deal, honestly. He's going out there, he's making just so many improvements fight after fight. We've been seeing that his last couple fights going out there. That Kelleher win was very impressive to me, just running through Brian Kelleher in the first round. Me and you and a lot of people kind of expected him to go out there and run through the Realtor and Benito Lopez, but still very good performance there. Yeah, I mean they're treating this fight as if Mario Batista is Bo Nickel, man. We have Mario Batista is a -1,000 on most books. We have the under completely juiced to like -160. -155 to the under 1.5. So a lot of people are expecting Marab Batista to go out there and just shave the ass of Guido Canetti, and I tend to agree with that. So yeah, I like Batista here. I think he probably does either submit Guido Canetti, maybe a club and sub, but I'm not so sure it's going to be like early in the first round like these lines are indicating, because Guido Canetti, he's still a tough guy. The problem with Guido Canetti a lot of times is his cardio fails him. He gets tired and then he gets hurt, then he gets submitted, typically later in the fight. So yeah, I like Batista here, but just not really many ways to bet this unless we want to do like maybe like a Mario Batista and JJ Aldrich parlay. Let me see if you would be interested in this. So Mario Batista -1,000 parlayed with JJ Aldrich -369. It comes out to -251. Do you have any interest in that?
It's 5 units to win too, huh?
Yeah,
I mean, it probably cashes, which is it's pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, let's pump the brakes. Mario Batista is a fantastic prospect. I mean, there's a reason why the line is -1,000, and it's because he's clearly the better fighter. But the reason that it's -1,000 instead of -350 is because there's a ton of squares in the pool. Just frankly, that's what's happening here. We were talking about it, Brady, after baseball finished last year, how all of a sudden favorites that were should have been -250, -300, getting bet up to -700, -800. And then really great fighters, like Umar Nurmagomedov and Bo Nickel are going off at -1,500, -2,000. But, I get it. Look, I mean, Batista is still only 29 years old. He's huge for the division. He switches stances. He's got an 11-2 record. He's got great volume. He's throwing about 14 significant strike attempts per minute at distance. He lands over 6. He absorbs 4.8, 43% accurate. He's landed a knockdown. He's been knocked down twice. And that's the thing, He's been dropped by Corey Sandhagen and Trevin Jones, and he was finished in both of those fights. So Mario Batista, has never lost a decision in his life. But he has been finished twice. And Guido Canetti, I mean, he kind of comes out like he's shot out of a cannon. And like he's got the body type where you probably could shoot him out of a cannon. He's kind of built like a cannonball, like a little Argentinian cannonball that comes out there and tries to take out your calves. He rolls that cannonball at you and hopes that he lands enough calf kicks to get you hurt so that he can land that big shot to the head and finish you. And Canetti's, the numbers aren't bad, but when you see who the wins are and you're like, who, Costa and Moutinho and Diego Rivas, and I don't even remember who the other guy was, but they're not good wins. The combined record of his opponents that he's beaten, 7 wins and 11 losses. And Batista's got some really nice grappling too. Very dangerous with his submissions due to the length that he has. 8 of 12 on his takedowns, averaging 2.25 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.13 submission attempts per 15 minutes. out-controlling his opponents at a 2.3 to 1 ratio, which signifies he's winning about 70% of the control time positions that he's been in. And, you know, he's got a little bit of power too as well. And he's got the much better conditioning. You know, this is a guy who's 3-0 in his career in decisions, while Canetti's actually 2-1, but the guys that he's beating by decision are not great fighters. So anyway, I like Batista here. I like him to win by second round submission, but I just don't see any value on trying to pick whether it's going to be a knockout or a submission. You're trying to pick a round almost when the line gets this silly. So this would be in the money line bet, this would be like Guido Canetti or pass. Maybe Guido Canetti by first round knockout at like plus 1,500. Maybe that might be worth a tenth of a unit, you know, because it's going to be the only thing that really has any value here.
Yep, that's how he wins. Canetti first round KO plus 3,000.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that, you know, for 1/10 of a unit to try to win 3 for his best win condition, why not?
Yep, I feel like that's literally the only way he possibly wins this fight. So, yep, Marab Batista should win. Yeah, people in the chat saying I haven't checked the DraftKings. I'm going to tonight. Marab Batista's 9,700 on DK. Bo Nickel wasn't even 9,700.
Yeah, I'm not going to be. Yeah, Canetti will be a good punt option this week.
Man, so
it's not like Batista's going out there and starching hose in the first round, is he?
Unless it's a realtor.
Yeah, right. Benito Lopez hadn't fought in like 3 years. Came out with half blonde, half black hair. Yeah, he got smoked. But yeah, I mean, he couldn't even finish Jay Perrin. You know, Miles Johns he knocked out, but Miles is shown to be very, very chinny. And he caught Kelleher in his sub. Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's gonna be a fun fight.
Yep, should be a fun one. All right, let's keep moving on. Then we have a very interesting fight. We have how do you pronounce his first name? I just call him SD.
When you watch this dude on the regional scene, they were just calling him SD Dumas. Yeah. You know, so I was calling him Special Delivery Dumas. But I believe the first name is Sedriques. I think that's how it's pronounced.
We'll just call him SD. I like SD.
Yeah, Special Delivery Dumas. I mean, I don't think you can really beat that, man. That's a good one.
Can't wait to talk about this fight. Is so interesting to talk about. We got Dumas going against Fremd. We got Dumas, 27 years old, 6'2" with a 79-inch reach. Josh Fremd, 29 years old, 6'4" with a 76-inch reach. It's going to be Dumas, 2 years younger. It's going to be Josh Fremd with a 2-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach disadvantage. We got Dumas, who went out there, got a submission win on the Contender Series, going to be making his debut here. And we got Josh Fremd, who made his debut on short notice against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Made a good account for himself. He did lose that fight, but he did not get his ass completely shaved like a lot of people, including me, thought was going to happen. Was able to hang on for the full 3 rounds there against Fluffy Hernandez. And then gets submitted by Trayshawn Gore in the second round. So doesn't make a ton of sense there. But yeah, Weezy, this fight should be very fun. Both these guys are pretty big for the division. Dumas 6'2", Josh Fremd 6'4", and shout out to Mills MMA Locker Room. I was watching that interview the other night, and I guess I was at a loss for words. I mean, SD, he's a character, man. He has the face tats. And I could have swore the dude went through like 10, 15 blunts in like a 30-minute sitting there. So, and he was talking about, you know, early in his career, he was like fighting at like Church's Chicken and parking lot. Just a really cool story. So go check out that interview. It was kind of interesting there. But yeah, just a very unique character in Dumas, but a very skilled guy. I think both these guys are very good. Weezy, this fight should be super fun. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this is a great fight. This is a great fight because, man, I watched the tape on Sedriques today, and I mean, it's very impressive. Now, he's not fighting great guys. We have to keep in mind everything that we've seen on tape. You know, Fremd is fighting the much, much, much better brand of competition here, okay? But Dumas, he looks like the complete package, right? He's got that size. Now, he's only 27 years old, 6'2", 79-inch reach for the middleweight division is huge. Orthodox fighter, 7-0 in his career. Only 2.5 years, though, as a pro. 6 of 7 wins by finish, 1 by decision. And in the decision, he looked great. He looked good. The grappling looked good, and the conditioning looked good. He gets a sub against Panaz on the Dana White Contender Series, but it happened so fast that we just didn't really learn much there. And his opponent was a kickboxer, so he got subbed. Doesn't really tell us whether, under the bright lights in the UFC cage against a guy like Fremd, who's been in there against, a bunch of really good fighters already. Factory X kid, well-rounded, so this is going to be a big test for Sedriques Dumas here. But yeah, when you watch that interview, I mean, like the guy smokes a terrifying amount of weed. And I mean, like, that's coming from your Uncle Weezy, who smokes some weed, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, and if Sedriques came to my place like that and smoked like that, while I would be smoking the entire time with him, I'd be like, Sedriques, maybe we should have a talk about your marijuana intake. I would actually have a little bit of, concern for how much he's smoking. But it's translating in the cage. I mean, he looks damn good in there, man. He's got great kicks that he throws from a distance. He's finished fights with calf kicks. He's finished a fight with a liver kick. And I've seen him finish a fight with a lead leg switch kick to the head. This guy's got really good power in those legs of his, and the wrestling seems to be there. The conditioning seems to be there. But with Josh Fremd, you got the big yins stepping in here. And like, we have to just go back a little bit in Fremd's tape to see like truly concerning knockouts where he's splitting dudes' skulls in half. And like, they're praying over people in the cage. Josh Fremd has serious fucking power, you guys. And he's been in there with a much better level of competition. He's training over there at Factory X with Cody Brundage, with Dustin Jacoby, with Julian Marquez, Coach Mark Montoya. He's got a room full of killers in there to learn from, to train with, while Sedriques Dumas is down there at Team Remedy. I don't know what's going on at Team Remedy. I don't know what's happening over there. Definitely not a gym that we're hearing a lot about. So we got a lot to find out about this Dumas kid. This is a big step up in competition for him. And the Big Yins is well-rounded. He's very good in the clinch. He's got savage elbows in there, and he's got ridiculous power. And we really haven't seen Josh's wrestling game, but this guy's got a legit wrestling game, a legit wrestling background to lean on as well. So I'm liking the Fremd side here because he's been made a pretty big underdog because the tape on Dumas is really impressive. And I think that tape is opening a lot of people's eyes, and you just see the money coming in on Dumas because the most recent thing that we've seen from Fremd is he gets blanketed by Anthony Hernandez for 3 rounds. And who takes an Anthony Hernandez fight on short notice anyway? That's a huge mistake. You just don't do that. That guy's a conditioning monster, and he drowns people with his volume. But, he couldn't even finish Fremd. And then Trayshawn Gore catches. What was that? A guillotine that he caught him in? I didn't get to see.
Like a weird. I think it was a weird guillotine where, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, he jumped off the cage. It was an incredible submission by Gore, but did not see that coming.
Okay, yeah, he snatched it up standing though, didn't he? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that there's some recency bias in this line, you guys. Fremd's the real deal. He's well-rounded, powerful, good wrestler, good camp. And like I say, man, the power is very scary from both of these guys. So maybe fight doesn't go to decision could be a good little parlay piece, because I think that these guys are both extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I was thinking under for sure. But they opened it up at 1.5, and it was plus 105. It's already minus 115. I don't know if I like a 1.5 there. I would have kind of liked a 2.5. Like, even the 2.5 is minus 210. The fight doesn't go minus 350, so it looks like they're kind of all over it there. But yeah, money's been pouring in on Dumas there. He opened up at minus 150, went to minus 141, and since then, he's now currently sitting at minus 180. And then Fremd is currently sitting at plus 155. So yeah, Dumas definitely a popular play. Every time I open Twitter up like the past couple 48 hours, I've seen just Dumas. So yeah, people like what they see from the guy, and we'll see if he's able to kind of pass this step up here. It should be a very, very fun fight. But yeah, I was thinking violence, but minus 350, I think they're on to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great fight. I mean, this is great matchmaking here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this Dumas because he seems to be a real character.
Absolutely, should be a fun fight, very fun fight. All right, let's keep moving on. And then Weezy, thank you all so much for hanging out. Let's see, we have 124 of you in here. Thank you for hanging out here on a Monday. We typically do go live on Sunday, but one live on Monday here, and we have Karl Williams going against Łukasz Brzeski. We got Karl Williams, 33 years old, 6'3" with a 79-inch reach. Brzeski, 30 years old, 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. We got Brzeski, 3 years younger with a 1-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach disadvantage. We got Karl Williams going to be making his debut here going against Brzeski, who looks like 1 draw, 1 no contest, and 1 loss in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Martin Buday in probably the biggest robbery ever. Like, I had a Martin Buday in a parlay, and I could have swore Brzeski won probably every single round. And they somehow gave the fight to Martin Buday. Like, I mean, you take a look at the numbers for that fight, and Brzeski just outlanded him in every single round. And it really wasn't even close. Like, he outlanded him 118 to 66. So he probably should have won that fight. Honestly, he looked a lot better than I was expecting him to look, to be honest. But he's going against Karl Williams here, who was on the contender series and did go out there, won a decision against Jimmy Lawson, went out there and racked up like over 10 minutes of control time, racked up some takedowns as well. Should be an interesting stylistic matchup. Weezy, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's hard to talk too much about this one because I've only seen the Jimmy Lawson tape for Karl Williams here, but Williams is an interesting dude, right? He's only been fighting for 2 years. That's it. But he's got 8 fights. This dude he'll take any fight anytime. So everything in his career up until the Lawson fight was a light heavyweight fight. And I was looking at his Tapology profile, and the dude was fighting every 2 months, every 3 months. And I know he tried to take a fight 3 weeks after he had just won a fight, but then the other guy had pulled out, so he was unable to fight for 3 months after that. That was the longest break that this dude took. So I got a feeling he would show up to fight Sedriques Dumas in a Church's Chicken parking lot for free. But we've got Łukasz Brzeski in front of him here, who is he's a PED user. He got caught after the Dylan Potter fight and suspended. He pissed hot for an estrogen blocker, which meant that he was already off of his steroid cycle and then was trying to hide the elevated levels of estrogen that were trying to make up for the previously elevated levels of testosterone in his system. He got caught with that in his system, had to sit out a year. And then he fought Martin Buday. I bet 4.5 units on Martin Buday at minus 225. And Brady, let me tell you something. I was driving from Chicago to Michigan, right, while that fight was taking place. And when I checked my phone, it said that Buday had won by split decision. And I thought that was a mistake because I didn't watch the fight, but I didn't think that Łukasz Brzeski was going to be able to deal with this guy at all. Do you remember how Brzeski looked at the weigh-ins?
Yeah.
He looked fat and flabby at the weigh-ins. And then if you looked at his Tapology picture, he looks like a Greek god in the Tapology picture. And it's oh, yeah, he's off the PEDs now, isn't he? So I don't think anyone was really expecting him to be able to do much against Buday. And Buday's just this mountain of a man who just puts people up against the cage and holds them there. And he didn't do any of that. So, Brzeski being the smaller guy, the faster guy, the busier guy, the guy with the better conditioning, kind of just danced around and outpointed him from a distance here. But Karl Williams has a wrestling background, and he went out there against Jimmy Lawson, who's a Penn State wrestler, and out wrestled Jimmy Lawson at heavyweight, and that was his first fight at heavyweight. So, and Karl Williams is 4-0 in his 8-fight career in decisions. His only loss came via triangle choke to Jason Butcher, who's a veteran of the sport and a great submission artist. So I need to see more tape of Williams, in the decisions against Wright and Amos, for instance, to see how much wrestling that he does. Because at distance, the guy basically does nothing. He's very, very low volume. But if he can wrestle at heavyweight, this kid can put together some wins for sure. But Brzeski is a guy that we saw have a lot of success in the grappling exchanges in the Dylan Potter fight. But I think that was a little bit different of a Brzeski. When you look at Brzeski's body in the Potter fight and then you see it in the Budaj fight, it's noticeably different. So I don't know. I need to find out more about both of these guys. But there's a lot of money coming in on Karl Williams. He's only 33 years old, and he started MMA at the age of 31. So I don't know what this kid's ceiling is, but that performance against Jimmy Lawson was really impressive on DWCS.
Yeah, what was even more impressive was he's a dog, a pretty big dog. He was plus 220 in that Lawson matchup. And like you said, Lawson, Penn State wrestler. So I remember researching that fight and thinking that Lawson would be, the one that was the better wrestler. But no, it was actually Williams that went out there and implemented that game plan. So that fight kind of shocked me. So, yeah, Williams looked good. He looked good. So, I kind of see why money's coming in on the guy. He opened up as a... If it'll load, not even loading. But anyway, he's minus 210 now. And we have Brzeski, who is sitting at plus 180. Oh, my goodness. Okay, there it is. So Williams actually opened up plus 145. Went to plus 135 shortly after. Went to a pick'em, and then money's just been pouring in on him the last 24 hours. So yeah, money's just pouring in on Williams as we speak here, Weezy. And then Brzeski plus 180. The fight goes to decision minus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 125. No strong lean there. Williams not much of a finisher. I think Williams should get this one done. Minus 210 though. I don't know. I would have liked that plus money there for a while, but it's definitely gone now. But yeah, money pouring in on Williams. Weezy, any thoughts on the money line now?
Yeah, that's a little bit wide, especially for a guy, like I said, this guy's 31 years old when he starts MMA. He was always an athlete. He always loved to compete, but, this was just something that, he had wrestled prior to that. So he does have a wrestling background. But he was like the kind of kid where they put him on the wrestling team because he was getting in fights all the time, and sometimes that's where the coach starts salivating, I need this guy. He's big. He likes to fight. They'll start asking you. They did that to my dad. So my dad came to this country, Brady, when he was 17 years old from Greece, and he didn't speak English, right? So when he came to Hyde Park, Illinois. For those of you who know, Hyde Park's on the south side by the lake, by 47th and Lakeshore Drive. And my dad not only didn't speak English, but he was basically the only white guy in the school. So every day people would get in his face, and then he didn't understand what they were saying, but he knew they were disrespecting him. So he'd just punch them in the face. He'd get dragged down to the principal's office every day. And basically the first 2 weeks of school, my dad would be in the principal's office every day, and they couldn't communicate with him because he barely spoke any English. And then finally one day the football coach showed up. He's like, "You're coming to practice with me." And he wound up being a defensive lineman on a football team, even though he didn't even know that football wasn't soccer, because soccer is what he grew up playing in Greece. They told him they want you on the football team. He's like, "Finally, I didn't think you had a football team." Well, it turns out they didn't. They had an American football team, made him a defensive tackle, and he led the team in sacks because he had that aggression.
I like it. I like that story, Weezy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, but that's what happens to some of these kids, they get put on the team because they're like, "Christ, man, we gotta channel this kid's aggression somehow."
Yeah, and that's what happened here with Karl Williams. I like it. All right, let us keep moving on. Then we have Anton Turkalj going against Victor Petrino. We got the pleasure man, 26 years old, 6'4", with a 70-inch 78-inch reach. We got Petrino, 25 years old, 6'2", with a 77-inch reach. We have Turkalj, who's going to be 1 year older and have a 2-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. We got Petrino, who is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, all 5 of those by knockout. Turkalj is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, had that decision win on the Contender Series, and then had a submission loss to Jailton Almeida his last fight out. Weezy, should be a very, very entertaining fight here. I think it's a violent fight as well. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so Petrino, I watched the tape on him. There's not that much available. His fight against Gadzhimurad Antigulov and UAE Warriors isn't available unless you download an app on your phone. So I didn't get to see that fight, but he's got 2 wins over Rodolfo Bellato. He's got another win in the first or the second fight of his career against Everton Hulk. And both of those guys happen to be the best guys that he fought. He fought Bellato, who was 5-0 in his debut. Then he fought Hulk, who was 0-0, but who is now 7-3 in the second fight of his career, did Petrino. He won those fights, one of them by decision, one of them by knockout. And then he crushed cans, like a dude with an 0-6 record, a dude with a 1-17 record, another dude with an 0-0 record. And then he gets on Dana White's Contender Series, then he beats Antigulov. And we know Antigulov is a guy that's got about 2 minutes of gas, and he goes for guillotines. And if he doesn't get that, he finds the door quick. And Petrino showed him the door, but I haven't seen that fight yet. And then he fought Bellato on the Contender Series, who's the guy that he already beat in his pro debut, and then he beat him again. So I think we're missing a lot of information on Vitor Petrino. The grappling game seems to be all right. His defensive wrestling seems to be okay. He seems to have a decent ground game, a functional ground game. He tries to get back up when he's taken down. He fishes for submissions to try to sweep or get back up or finish the submission. If it doesn't work, he starts trying to get back up again. He's very, very, very low volume on the feet, though. He just doesn't do much. Turkalj going to do more on the feet. Now, Turkalj is a guy who had to get into fighting because he was stealing everybody's girlfriends, and then he had to learn how to defend himself because this guy is just a magnet for trim. He's a beautiful man with a beautiful body, beautiful head of hair, and the ladies love him. That's why they call him the pleasure man. And he's out there, he had to learn how to, basically kick the ass of all the jilted boyfriends that he stole their girlfriends. So here he is now in the UFC after an extensive amateur career. Anton Turkalj, 11-3 as an amateur fighter, Brady. So he's definitely very experienced before he even turned pro. And then once he turned pro, it was just all finishes. 7 finishes in a row. He's got very unorthodox striking. He'll throw jump knees, spinning back fists. He's got very like a herky-jerky style, and he's very hittable. He's definitely very hittable, but Turkalj's got a great chin. He can absolutely absorb punishment. In the Ibo Aslan fight, Ibo was landing some really big shots there in the first round. Turkalj ate them all like a pancake, and then in the scramble wound up getting the dude's back and choking him out in the second round. Turkalj's really good at finding moments, and he finds those moments because he's got excellent conditioning, excellent durability, and a very strange style. He's got power on the feet, and he's got good wrestling, and he's got good grappling. So he can find multiple ways to win moments and minutes in a fight. And we saw him win minutes against Acacio dos Santos when those striking exchanges weren't going his way. He went to the grappling, and he took the guy down 11 times, and he controlled him for over 10 minutes of that fight. So Turkalj's experienced. He's young. He's handsome. He's got a beautiful head of hair. And he does a lot more than Vitor Petrino. And I think Petrino's best asset is his moment winning. And I don't think that's going to work against Turkalj because he's been punched by so many jilted boyfriends that at this point, I think he's really built up a bit of a callus on that face of his. And I think he can absorb the big shots of Vitor Petrino. And I think he'll have a lot more avenues, not only to win moments in this fight, but to win minutes with the wrestling, the grappling, the clinch control. So, yeah, I'm going with the pleasure man here. And I think he probably gets it done inside the distance.
This is the closest line fight on the entire card. We have Turkalj opened up plus 145, currently minus 113, and the Petrino opened up minus 170, currently minus 107. The over-under set at 1.5 rounds, the over 1.5 minus 188, the under 1.5 plus 158. It's weird on 5 dimes right now. If they have the fight doesn't go to decision, minus 165, but on Bet Online it's minus 325, so massive difference there. Any thoughts on the line movement there? Any thoughts on any props that stick out maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, Petrino has finished 6 of his 7 wins. Turkalj has finished 7 of his 8 wins. Turkalj has been finishing his only loss, but it was by Jailton Almeida. I mean, we know nothing about that performance. Is like just you throw it out the window because it's short notice up at 220 against a guy that, you know, like that's how Turkalj got his contract. They basically were like, hey, look, if you take an ass whooping from Jailton, we'll give you 2 more fights to try to win, and then you can get another contract, you know? And that was Turkalj's way in because he didn't impress on DWCS because he kind of had to take a minute winning path. He kind of had to go to plan B because Dos Santos was piecing him up on the feet a little bit. So, yeah, I'm leaning violence here. What did you say the lines were? Because I've got my prop template up here.
It's weird. On 5 dimes, it's only like minus 165 for the fight doesn't go. And then on Bet Online, it's like minus 325.
And minus 325 is a 76% implied probability. But in their career, in their combined 3-round fights outside of the UFC, 86.67% or 13 of 15 fights have finished inside the distance. And Turkalj's only UFC fight finished inside the distance. So, you know, even at minus 325, you know, the analytics are telling you that it's still a little bit of a bargain there.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get that 5 dimes price, maybe on like DraftKings or something, or FanDuel. But yeah, Bet Online has it way overpriced compared to 5 dimes, which is only minus 165, which is just a significant difference there.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get it at minus 65, minus 165, job bless, go get it, you know, and then you can just arb out.
Goodness, and like the under 2.5 on 5 dimes is minus 115. I would love that. Yeah.
Yep. Dude, under 2.5 rounds is 13 of 15 of their combined professional fights. 14 of 16 if you count Turkalj's fight against Jailton Almeida. That's 78% or something like that. Or I mean 87%. 87%. And they're giving you 53% implied probability. Come on. 5 dimes. Where have you been my whole life?
I know. Life would be so much easier with the 5 dimes account. That is for sure.
So much easier.
Yeah. Oh, well. All right, Weezy. We have the next fight. I think this is the last fight on the prelims. We got Raphael Assunção going against Davey Grant. We got Assunção, 40 years old, 5'5" with a 66-inch reach. Davey Grant, 37 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. We got Grant 3 years younger. Grant with a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. We got Raphael Assunção 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Submission loss to Marlon Moraes. Decision loss to Corey Sandhagen. Knockout loss to Cody Garbrandt. Knockout loss against Ricky Simone. And then a decision win against Victor Henry. As far as Davey Grant, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Martin Day. Knockout win against Jonathan Martinez. Decision loss against Marlon Vera. A decision loss against Adrian Yanez. And then a knockout win against Luis Smolka. Yeah, we have 40-year-old bantamweight here in Raphael Assunção, but he was able to turn back the clock a little bit and get a really big upset win against Victor Henry his last time out. Davey Grant, he's not a young guy in his own right, but he's 37 years old, but it kind of feels like Davey Grant's looking better than ever nowadays. He had that really close fight with Adrian Yanez, that split decision. And then he went out there and finished. Luis Smolka looked really good in the Day fight, the Martinez fight. He looked good in the Vera fight in the first round, and then Vera started to take over and really beat him up, but was able to survive the full 3 against him. Should be a pretty interesting fight here, Weezy. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Assunção is kind of like a frustrating fighter to cap. He kind of reminds me of Shamil Abdurakhimov, way less handsome Shamil Abdurakhimov, in that he kind of brings you into his style of fight. His style of fight is a very low volume, counter-striking based affair where he's going to try to threaten with his wrestling attacks to try to maybe pare down your volume a little bit and he kind of he's so successful in bringing that pace, right? Because you could look at the distance striking numbers and see Davey Grant, he's attempting 15 distance strike attempts per minute spent at distance in the UFC. And he's spent 72 and a half minutes at distance. So in those 72 and a half minutes, you multiply that by 15.05. That's how many distance strikes this guy has thrown in the UFC. Now, Assunção is throwing just a little bit more than half that at 8.78. Assunção is landing 3.4 significant strikes per minute at distance, spent at distance, while Grant's landing almost double that at 6.25. So Grant just throws a lot more volume. But I promise you, when this fight starts, Assunção is going to hypnotize him somehow, and we're going to see Davey Grant probably throwing a lot less volume than we're used to seeing him throw, because there's something about Assunção's wrestling entries and the way that he counters that really slows down the pace and output of his opponent. So he's just been so good at it. 14-4 in his record in decisions. And look, Assunção in the UFC, Brady, 7-2 in decisions. And look, the guys that Assunção is beating and losing to, 104 UFC wins, 60 losses. The average guy that he's fighting has 7.5 wins and 4.3 losses, 11.71 total fights. So this guy's been doing it, and he's been fighting at the highest level of the UFC, the best competition that there is to offer. Look at those names: Marlon Moraes, Corey Sandhagen, Cody Garbrandt, former champion, Ricky Simon. And then he goes out there and he makes it look easy. He 30-27s Victor Henry by landing the bigger shots and by mixing in the takedowns. Shit that he's been doing his entire career. And this guy has only attempted 36 takedowns, in the UFC. But when his fights spend a great deal of time at distance, even though he throws less volume, he winds up landing more. And he winds up getting the occasional knockdown, and he winds up winning very close decisions. But Grant's kind of the opposite in that he's finished 3 of his 5 UFC wins, and he's been finished in 3 of his 5 UFC losses. This guy has been submitted in all of his finished losses before. So he's when he's been finished 4 times, all of them have been by submission. The other 2 losses in his career are by decision. But Grant has looked good lately. He's shown good power lately, and he kind of just shows that willingness to say, you know what, I'm standing in the pocket with you, and I'm going to trust my chin because I got a great chin, and I'm going to trust my power. And I think if Davey Grant does that, I think Davey Grant has to have no respect for Raphael Assunção. He has to go out there and say, this guy can't fucking hurt me. I'm not worried if he takes me down. I'm going to stand in the pocket and I'm going to fucking bang with him. Because if he tries to outpoint him, he's going to wind up getting dragged into Raphael's game. And Raphael's going to do what he's done his entire career, which is just win just a little more minutes than you do and wind up getting his hand raised via decision in a boring, close fight.
Yep. And you're right. You're exactly right. Davey Grant has to go in there and show no respect for him. Which I kind of lean towards him doing. Like, he went out there against Marlon Vera and showed no respect towards Marlon Vera. But yeah, Assunção just has that way. I don't know what it is, but he has that way of just slowing down fights, making them kind of boring. And he excels in those fights. We have a close line here as well. We have Davey Grant opening at -155, currently -133. Assunção opening up as a +135 dog, currently +113. So it looks like this money's closing in a little bit here. Weez, any thoughts on the money line? No props really sticking out to me one way or another. Don't have really a strong lean on whether this fight goes or doesn't go.
Well, Assunção couldn't finish a glass of water. He's only got 2 finishes in 9 UFC wins. So, and at the age of 40, I don't think he's finishing anybody really, So, especially not Davey Grant, who we saw just go absolutely to bloody war with Marlon Vera. He's lasting with Adrian Yanez. It'd be really ridiculous to see Assunção land a straight right that sleeps Davey Grant. I mean, maybe he submits him on the ground, because we have seen Davey Grant get submitted before, but I think it's highly unlikely. So what's Assunção by decision? Is it any better than plus 150?
It is plus 210.
That'd be the way I'd play the Assunção side, and maybe a finish only prop on Davey Grant, because Grant really is throwing with very bad intentions, and he's shown some serious power recently. He's fighting that style. He's fighting that wild man style that could bring a finish out of, especially against a 40-year-old guy in Assunção who had been knocked out by Ricky Simon, been knocked out by Garbrandt, submitted by Marlon Moraes. So we could see Grant, who's knocked out his last 3 UFC opponents that he's beaten, definitely get a finish here. So yeah, maybe a finish only prop for Grant, maybe Raphael Assunção by decision, but either way, I'd be reluctant to lay juice. Everyone's talking about how old Assunção is. Davey Grant's a 37-year-old bantamweight who hasn't been particularly active, who owns a restaurant, and who's had his own share of injuries too.
Yeah, that Davey Grant finish only is minus 175. It was minus 160, but money just came in on it recently.
Yeah, and Kavath MMA is saying Assunção is one of the best defensive fighters of all time. Yeah, look at that distance striking defense, dude. 67%. I mean, that's really impressive, and that's how he manages to win minutes.
Yep, for sure. Should be a fun fight, or it could be a boring fight. All depends on if Assunção gets his way or not. If he gets his way, it's going to be a very boring fight. If Davey Grant gets his way, it's going to be fun and exciting. So kind of a clash of styles there.
Yeah, absolutely. But this next fight, I think, is going to be a lot more fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the return of Austin Lingo.
Yep, we got Ricardo Ramos going against Austin Lingo. We got Ricardo Ramos, 27 years old, 5'9" with a 72-inch reach. We got Austin Lingo, 28 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach. We got Ramos 1 year younger, and it's going to be Lingo with a 1-inch height advantage, but Ramos with a 2-inch reach advantage. We got Ramos, who is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had a submission win against Eduardo Garagori, a knockout loss against Lerone Murphy, a decision win against Bill Algeo, a decision loss to Zubair Tuhugov, and then a knockout win against Danny Chavez. As far as Austin Lingo made his debut against Yusuf Zalal, lost that fight by decision. And then he won a decision against Jacob Kilborn and then Luis Saldana. So, yeah, I like Ramos here, and there's money coming in on him. He's only 27 years old. I like the skill set, solid striker, lots of power. His grappling is really good. I'd like to see him go to it a lot more. When he has went to that grappling, he's had success, was able to submit Eduardo Garagori, and I feel like he probably should take that path here against Austin Lingo, who that's a law fight. I thought was a pretty bad look for him. We saw Yusuf Zalal go out there, take him down, control him, put him in some bad spots, and do that for 15 minutes. And I feel like that could be the path to victory for Ricardo Ramos here. There was a fight recently where we did see Ramos go out there and implement that exact game plan. It was against Bill Algeo. It was against Bill Algeo. He went out there and landed 8 takedowns and attempted 13 takedowns. And I feel like I'd like him to see them do that here. But even on the feet, I feel like, Austin Lingo comes forward. Not the best striking defense, but he hits very hard. I think he has a couple knockdowns in the UFC, and Ramos has been knocked out, but I feel like Ramos has him covered pretty much everywhere, but especially the grappling. So I see why money's coming in on Ramos. I did play him myself on, I think, Sunday, and since then, his money's been pouring in on him. So I like Ramos here. The line is getting a little bit wild. I think it's like minus 350 now. And I was also potentially looking at maybe like a fight doesn't go to decision, like an under, which is plus money, just because if Ramos gets this fight down to the mat, I think he subs him. And then Lingo, if he does win, I kind of think it's by knockout. So I kind of like the under here as well, but definitely on Ramos in this fight. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one? Should be an absolute banger for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like the first thing that jumped out to me, Brady, was the fact that Ricardo Ramos is actually younger than Austin Lingo. I mean, how crazy is that when you see that Ricardo Ramos has been fighting as a pro for 10 years, 9 months, and 11 days. But he's only 27 years old, 7 months and 1 day. So that means he took his first pro fight when he was 16 years old. And this guy's got an extensive Brazilian jiu-jitsu background as well. While Lingo has been fighting for 5 years and he's 28, So, it's crazy to see that this guy Ramos is a year younger than Austin Lingo, but he's got 10 more professional fights, 60 more minutes in the pro cage, 7 more fights at the UFC level, 55 more minutes in the UFC cage. And then, we know that Ramos is a legit Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy with a really solid grappling game, really sneaky submission game. He's averaging 2.58 takedowns per 15 minutes, averaging 0.61 submissions per 15 minutes, and he's finished 43.75% of his 16 wins by submission. That's 7 submission wins in his career, and he's even gotten one in the UFC as well. So Ramos is doing okay work at distance. I mean, he absorbs more than he lands, but his opponents throw just a little bit more volume than him. 35% accuracy. He does have some knockdowns, though. Or I'm sorry. Well, he's got 3 knockdowns, so there's nothing wrong with that in 10 fights, and he's got a couple of knockouts with those spinning back fists that he lands. But Lingo's got power too, dude. I mean, Lingo's landed 2 knockdowns in 3 fights. If you watched Austin Lingo's regional scene footage before he got to the UFC, he was sleeping dudes, and he's one of these dudes that came in with 4 wins in the first 30 seconds or some shit like that, where he was just, like Lou Cosi, just coming forward, just blasting, waiting to land one big shot. And once he did, he was melting dudes. So Lingo's very dangerous. And we're going to see a little bit different of an Austin Lingo here. He's still only 28 years old. He's getting better, but it's been a while since we've seen him. He beat Luis Saldana, and Luis Saldana is a really tricky striker, really good striker. So, Austin could absolutely surprise us a little bit, because I don't know what here, let me look. I just want to see what the last date of Lingo's fight was, because it's been a minute since he's been in the cage. 8/21/21. So all of 2020, a year and a half since we've seen Austin Lingo in the cage. So he must have had some injuries. But knockdowns in the Kilburn and the Saldana fights. And, he mixes in just a little bit of grappling as well, with 2 takedowns on 3 attempts. He's being out-controlled 18% to 15%. But, he's winning 45% of the control time positions that he's been in. 80% takedown defense. So maybe Austin Lingo can absolutely surprise some people here, but he just hasn't beaten and fought the same level of competition that Ramos has thus far at the UFC level. Ramos has shown power of his own on the feet, and we do know that Ramos is, he's going to be the much better grappler here. So if he can get takedowns, if he could try to get to Austin Lingo's back, he can make this look really easy. But if this thing stays on the feet for extended periods of time, I think Austin Lingo is going to look a lot better than plus 275.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still favor Ramos in the striking, but Lingo does have that power. He could knock him out or knock him down. I was checking Lingo's Instagram to see what he's been up to, and it looks like he was supposed to fight Jonathan Pierce a while ago, like 72 weeks ago. He's supposed to fight Jonathan Pierce.
Yeah, and he had to pull out. I think that was him that had to pull out of that fight, not Pierce, if I'm not mistaken. And great career move, because nobody wants to fight Jonathan Pierce. Now Pierce has got Bryce Mitchell next, and that's going to be a fun fight.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the layoff has, or why there's been such a layoff for Lingo, but he's training at Forks. Maybe we can see some improvements. But this is a big step of a competition for Austin Lingo as I lose my voice. Ricardo Ramos opened up minus 225, currently minus 350. Austin Lingo opened up plus 190, currently plus 285. This is what I'm kind of interested in, maybe the under, because I think if Ramos gets this fight down to the mat, he's going to sub this guy. Plus 100 for that under 2.5. It was plus 120, so some money's coming in on that. So I might be taking a look at the under there. Ramos by submission plus 275. Lingo by knockout only plus 475. It should be a very fun fight. This kicks off the main card, right?
Yes, it does. That's going to be the one that kicks it off, and it's a great one because we haven't seen Lingo, but he's exciting, and Ramos is getting the job done, and coming off that knockout win with the spinning back fist, definitely looking forward to seeing him back in there. So I think it's going to be a really fun fight. The problem is the analytics don't like the unders here. Only 5 of 13 of Lingo and Ramos's combined UFC fights have went under 2.5 rounds. That's 38.5%. And right now we're paying 48.8% on the implied probability of the line. So that's about a 10% overpayment there. So But stylistically, I could see this thing finishing under 2.5. I just kind of feel like we need a little bit more juice than that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think I bet the Lingo unders in like all 3 of his fights and been burned each time. So,
yeah, he went to decision all 3 times, and like you would have never expected that because, like I was saying, that footage prior to the UFC is like, oh, he's hurting people bad, and he looks like he's shot out of a cannon as soon as the fight starts. So it's weird that none of his fights have finished at the UFC level.
Especially that dang Kilburn fight. Like I was pretty confident in the under in that fight. He knocked down Kilburn, was not able to finish him. But maybe I'll get burnt a 4th time on it, or maybe just Lingo's not a finisher in the UFC. Maybe that's the problem.
Sometimes that's what happens, man. You know, they're killers on the regional scene, and then they get up to the UFC and they freeze up a little bit. They take a lot less risks.
That could very well be the case. All right, Weezy, we'll move on to the next fight. Then we have Said Nurmagomedov going against Jonathan Martinez. We got Nurmagomedov, 30 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. Martinez, 28 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. We have Martinez 2 years younger, and both same height, same reach there. We got Nurmagomedov is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A decision loss to Hani Barcelos, a knockout win against Mark Striegel, a submission win against Cody Stamann, a decision win against Douglas Silva de Andrade, and then a submission win against Jakub Romanov. As far as Martinez, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A knockout loss against Davey Grant, a decision win against Dvalishvili, who we haven't seen in a while. For some reason, we got Alejandro Perez decision win, Vince Morales decision win, and then Cub Swanson knockout win. Probably the best Martinez has ever looked in that Cub Swanson fight there. But both these guys very solid. Good fight here. Weezy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, fun fight for sure. You know, these guys' numbers look pretty damn similar. I mean, Martinez a couple years younger, same height, same reach. It's an orthodox versus southpaw matchup. Very similar amounts of pro experience, but Martinez with a couple more fights, 60 more minutes in the pro cage. But it's Said who's been a lot less active. 13 and a half year career, but only 19 pro fights, while Martinez has been a lot more active, fighting a little bit more than twice a year. At the UFC level, it's Martinez who has more experience, 11 fights to Nurmagomedov 7, and he's got almost 100 more minutes, about 90 more minutes in the UFC cage. In terms of finish stats, both of these guys finish over 50% of their pro wins. Both of these guys are finishing at the UFC level. 4 of 6 wins for Nurmagomedov are finishes, and for Martinez, it's 3 of 8. So both of these guys have got some finish wins. And Nurmagomedov has never been finished in his 19-fight pro career. And for Martinez, he's only been finished once in 21 fights. So both of these guys are pretty durable. And it was Davey Grant was the only one to finish Jonathan Martinez. When we look at those distance striking numbers, Nurmagomedov, really nice ratio there. Lands 3.97 at distance and only absorbs 2.41. Over 40% accuracy is good. 63.5% distance defense is very good. Jonathan Martinez also with an impressive, about 0.83 significant strike differential at distance, and he throws about the same amount as his opponents. A little more accurate than Said, just a tick less defensively responsible than Said, but both of these guys have got a 62% or better distance striking defense, which is good. In terms of winning minutes on the ground, Said Nurmagomedov, when you watch the regional scene footage of him, this dude can wrestle. And then he got to the UFC and he forgot how. I mean, he's just not doing it. 2 of 21 on takedowns. They should take this guy's last name away from him. They should give him like an Irish last name because he's not wrestling really well here, but he's striking well, and he's got that beautiful ninja choke, man. When you try to take Said down, your neck is going to be in jeopardy, and he finishes those. So that's a really good defensive wrestling technique that Said Nurmagomedov uses to keep the fight on the feet when he wants it. It's that front choke series that he goes to. He went for it over and over and over again against Romanov, and he got it late in the fight. And it's interesting to see a Nurmagomedov only winning 17% of the control time positions that he's in. And his fights spend over 31% of his fights are taking place in control time positions, but he's just giving up takedowns. He's been taken down 8 times, and he's only gotten 2 takedowns, and he's attempted just as many takedowns as his opponents have. While Martinez, on the other hand, Jonathan Martinez has attempted 11 takedowns. Jonathan Martinez's opponents have attempted a total of 27, but Martinez is out-controlling his opponents at a 1.631-1 ratio. 13% control time for Martinez, only 8% control time allowed. So Martinez has done a good job of winning some minutes on the ground and getting back up when he gets taken down. And he's even got a reverse or 2. So it's Nurmagomedov who's fighting the better brand of competition at the UFC level, and Nurmagomedov's wins are a little bit better in terms of ratio. This is a good fight, because we've seen the best Jonathan Martinez lately. I mean, both of these guys are on 4-fight winning streaks, right? And for Nurmagomedov, it's Striegel, but then Stamen, Silva de Andrade, and Kakermano. Very impressive. And then for Martinez, he got the win over Dvalishvili on short notice. And then Alejandro Turbo Perez was a little bit old. Vince Morales is okay. Cub Swanson a little bit old. I think Saeed's wins are a little bit better at this point. I think, in the striking, I think that this is going to be very close. And I don't think either one of these guys is going to grapple very much. I kind of see this fight going to decision because both of these guys are very durable. In 6 combined losses, only one of them has been inside the distance. So maybe a fight goes to decision or an over 2.5 bet. But I think I'll be picking Saeed Nurmagomedov to win this one by decision.
Yeah, I had some interest in, I think it was Sunday. I saw Nurmagomedov at minus 175, and now he's minus 245. So money's just pounding. The money line is getting pounded right now. Minus 245 for Nurmagomedov. Martinez was all the way down to plus 150, and now he's plus 210. So it looks like somebody dropped a bomb on Nurmagomedov recently.
Okay, and that line is I see this as being a close fight. So in my opinion, then the value's on Martinez right now because there's really no evidence to suggest that Saeed's going to dominate in the stand-up here, just throwing spinning back fist after spinning back fist after spinning back fist. He does that too much, man. And Martinez is going to be ready for that. The Factory X striking coaches will have him ready for what's going to be a fairly predictable game plan from Saeed because he just throws entirely too much spinning shit. And if he makes a mistake, Martinez is probably going to capitalize on it. So, I mean, at this line, man, Martinez's money line is a little bit intriguing to me.
Yeah, I wonder where that money line is going to go. I wasn't expecting it to get this wide. But yeah, minus 245, money pouring in. Fight goes to decision, minus 130. That's not bad. Fight doesn't get decision, plus 100. Any thoughts on that?
Minus 130 for a bantamweight fight, because about 50% of bantamweight fights, maybe 49%, finish inside the distance. So, you're paying a little bit of juice there for that fight goes, but still, I mean, I think that here, let me look at the prop template here. Nurmagomedov and so combined 8 of their 18 fights have finished inside the distance. That's 44%. So that means 55% of their fights have went to decision, and you're paying minus 130, which is about 56%, something like that. So it's a fairly priced line.
Yep. I hit my head. Why do I don't have a voice, Weezy? Excuse me.
That's what happens when you go to Vegas, man. Everyone understands.
Anyway, I was gonna say I hit my first over of the year. 285 hit my first over 1.5 in the Barrio fight.
Dude, I had fight starts round 3 in the greasy 4-leg parlay, but
so
Viviani Araujo's money line was also in there, so it wasn't bad enough. But I like that over 1.5 because it opened at minus 140, but then when it went to minus 180, it wasn't bettable for me there. And I told you about that because when something gets up to about minus 140, I hate laying juice so much that I kind of tell myself, you either max bet it or you stay away. And I wasn't max betting an over in a Barrio Marquez fight.
Yeah, it wasn't sweaty at all up until it hit that over. And as soon as it hit that over 1.5, Barrio just turned it on and just beat the crap out of Marquez.
Dude, that output was crazy. I kind of feel like if Smitty let that go until the bell, that Barrio might have collapsed on the ground from the output that he was putting out, because he threw about 300 strikes in about 30 seconds. It was absolutely bonkers, but what a finish by Mark Barrio.
Yeah, I know Mark Smith cashed it over 1.5 as well, so he was feeling pretty good about that. He was trying to cash the over 2.5, but couldn't quite get there. Mark Smith couldn't quite get there.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, these refs know, hey, this guy Marquez is durable. I'm going to let him take a little bit of a beating because he can, we've seen Marquez come back from that kind of shit before. So he gave Marquez as much of a chance as he could to get back into that fight. But, man, Barrio just wouldn't stop.
Yeah, I was telling the guy next to me, I was like, this fight's over. And there was like 2 minutes left in the round. And I said that. And then like 2 minutes later, the fight finally gets stopped. I mean, get some help, Mark Smith.
I know, man. That was a bad stoppage. Optically, it was really bad.
Yeah, man. Poor Marquez. Anyway, a couple more fights, Weezy, to get through. We have a fight. We don't need to spend too much time on this fight. We talked about it a million times a couple weeks ago. Nikita Krylov going against Ryan Spann. We got Krylov, 30 years old, 6'3", 77-inch reach. Ryan Spann, 31 years old, 6'5", 79-inch reach. We got Krylov 1 year younger. We got Spann 2-inch height advantage, and then Spann with a 2-inch reach advantage. Krylov is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Johnny Walker. Decision loss to Ankalaev, a submission loss to Paul Craig, knockout win against Gustafsson, and then a decision win against Volkan Oezdemir as far as Ryan Spann. Knockout loss against Johnny Walker, knockout win against Misha Serkinov, a submission loss against Anthony Smith, Ian Kudalaba submission win, and then a Dominic Reyes knockout win. So, yeah, this was a couple weeks ago, and on DraftKings that night, I mean, everything was perfect. I had 100% owned in the main event. Everything was perfect, played everything perfect, set myself up in a way where if Krylov won the fight, I got a takedown. And if Spann won the fight, I would have been really close to a takedown. And then all of a sudden, the fight falls off, like, I think the beginning of the main card. So that sucks. And it was due to Krylov with, like, some health issues. So they pushed the fight back a couple weeks. And this fight's going to be at a 215-pound catchweight bout. And not only did I have this fight in all of my DraftKings lineups, I had like 5 units total in terms of like the under 1.5. I had the under 3.5 in a parlay. I had the fight doesn't go to decision in a parlay. So I had like so much invested in this fight, and then it falls off during the cards. Extremely frustrating. And now they're going to open up the under 1.5. I'm guessing at probably like something crazy, because I remember getting it like minus 115, and that's not going to happen this time around. So kind of frustrating there. And now this is only 3 rounds, I believe. So just another aspect where I'm probably not going to have much money on this fight, but I had a ton of money on it the first time. But yeah, I mean, I think this fight finishes. I'd be curious to see where they do open up the under. It looks like minus 135 now. So I don't know. I think I was picking Spann the first go around. I think I'm going to stick with Spann. I didn't have a ton of confidence in it though, but I think somebody probably does get served here, and probably in the first round, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, you got that right, man. I mean, look at Spann's last 5 fights: win KO, win sub, lost sub, win KO, lost KO. And then you got actually 3 out of Krylov's last 5 fights are decisions, which is hilarious because that guy's had 4 decisions in his entire career of 38 fights, and 3 of them have come in the last 5 fights, which is just bizarre. But either way, we've talked about this fight before. I don't think it's easy to be confident on either guy's money line, because both of these guys are phenomenal moment winners. And it's really hard to predict when you got 2 great moment winners out there against each other, who's going to be the first one to find that moment. Will it be a big shot from Spann? Because this guy's, distance striking power numbers are ridiculous. He lands a knockdown on 4.42% of the distance strikes that he throws, which basically means if he throws if he lands 21 distance strikes, the odds are that he's landed 1 knockdown in there. There's a much bigger chance that he's landed a knockdown than not landed one. So, the Spann's power on the feet is crazy. And when he lands those shots, if he makes you panic wrestle, his guillotine is fantastic too. When he snatches that up standing, or he'll jump for it. And, Krylov is a guy that has definitely got a nose to finish fights. He's got 29 professional wins. 27 of them are wins inside the distance by sub or knockout. And he's equal opportunity. He's got more subs than he has knockouts, but this guy doesn't favor one or the other. He can get either one. So, yeah, we're talking about Krylov has fought the better brand of competition. He's beaten the better brand of competition. Krylov is winning just a little bit more of the control time positions that he's in, but he spends more time there and he commits more to it. 48 takedowns in 17 fights compared to 14 takedown attempts for Spann in 9 fights. So Krylov commits more to the grappling. He spends more time there, and he's got power of his own on the feet, but he also wins minutes on the feet by just throwing way more volume and landing more than his opponents do. So the reason I'm picking Krylov in this spot is because I think Krylov has just as good of moment winning potential as Ryan Spann, but I feel like the minute winning potential is all on the Krylov side, and the numbers really do flesh that out. And we've got a 17 fight sample size for Krylov, a 9 fight sample size for Spann. So these are the kind of fights where we can lean on the stats a little bit more. And they're definitely telling us that Krylov's got more paths to find success in this fight than Ryan Spann does.
Yep, he does. Kind of surprised how close the line is. Krylov only -166. I could have sworn he was like wider than that the last time out, right? Or
I think he was around there. I think maybe I think he was like actually around -140, but then they got it up to maybe -180-ish.
yeah,
I kind of feel like that's where it was on fight day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was around like -180 something too. But yeah, I probably won't be touching this fight. Maybe like the fight doesn't go in a parlay piece. But outside of that, nothing really sticking out. Don't have confidence one way or another.
It's going to be, I have confidence that somebody's going to get served. It's going to probably be under 1.5 rounds, and I have confidence it's going to be a super fun fight. But outside of that, I don't feel confident about the result of this fight at all, because both of these guys can change the trajectory of a fight in the blink of an eye.
Yep, for sure. Okay, Weezy, we have 2 fights left. All right, co-main event, we have a very good one. Alexander Romanov going against Alexander Volkov. We got Romanov, 32 years old, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. Volkov, 34 years old, 6'7" with an 80-inch reach. Romanov, 2 years younger. It's going to be Volkov with a 5-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage. We got Volkov, who is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win against Overeem, a decision loss against Gon, decision win against Tybura, a submission loss against Aspinall, and then a knockout win against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. As far as Romanov, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, had a submission win against De Lima, a decision win against Wanda Spino, a knockout win against Jared Vandera, a submission win against Chase Sherman, and then a decision loss against Marcin Tybura as just a massive favorite here. So striker versus grappler matchup. What it's going to come down to is if Volkov is able to stuff these takedowns or not. I lean towards him really not being able to. What the thing about Volkov is, I think he has solid takedown defense. The problem with Volkov is when he gets taken down. When he gets taken down, more often than not, he's just not getting up. And that's going to be a problem against Alexander Romanov. So I like Romanov to get the takedowns here early on. Put a lot of damage on Volkov, potentially submit him in the first round. My concern is if this fight does get extended. We have seen Romanov slow down in the past. He slowed down really bad in the Tybura fight, but that was at Salt Lake. So give him a slight pass for that. But even in the Espino fight, just completely gassed in the 3rd round. Even against Jared Vandera, he was looking tired in the 2nd round. So the cardio is a little bit of concern for Romanov. But if he does get the fight down to the mat, I just don't see Volkov getting up. I really don't like Volkov's get-up game. But Weezy should be a fun co-main event here. How do you feel about this fight?
Love this fight. Yeah, Romanov's younger, but obviously Volkov, the natural heavyweight here, 5 inches taller, 5-inch reach advantage. It's an orthodox versus southpaw matchup. That favors the southpaw, especially because of what Romanov does on the feet, which is next to nothing. But what he does do all the time is that rear leg body kick, which is going to be open to the liver of Volkov here. So you want to be the southpaw throwing those body kicks in a southpaw versus orthodox matchup. And that's Romanov's best weapon on the feet. But obviously we know what's going to happen here. You know, Volkov wants to keep this at striking range, use that 5-inch height advantage, that 5-inch reach advantage, and piece Romanov up and land big shots and maybe knock him out. But Alexander Romanov isn't really letting people do that. You know, about 69% of Alexander Romanov's 52 minutes in the UFC cage thus far has taken place in control time positions. and he's winning 87% of those control time positions. And there's a fight against a legit wrestler in there in Juan Espino, where he really showed that he can go to war and wrestle for a full fight with a top-notch heavyweight wrestler in Juan Espino. Alexander Volkov, I went back and I watched what I consider to be the tape against grapplers, right? Guys that have had some success in the grappling exchanges in the UFC. And I started with the Tim Johnson fight. He won that fight by split decision. I don't know how he won that fight. Tim Johnson absolutely won the first and second rounds of that fight. And Volkov was taken down and controlled in that fight. Roy Nelson won the first round of their fight, but lost the last two. He was unable to get takedowns. Against Fabricio Verdum, it was a 5-round fight. Fabricio Verdum won the first 2 rounds with takedowns and ground control. The third round was a slow-paced striking match, and then Volkov landed big shots in the fourth. Against Curtis Blades controlled Volkov for 13 of the first 15 minutes of that fight in the first 3 rounds. After that, we saw the Alistair Overeem fight. Overeem didn't go for any takedowns, and he wound up getting knocked out in the second round. And then against Marcin Tybura, we saw Tybura go for takedowns but not get them. And we saw a very close fight that went back and forth, but Volkov did win it 29-28 on all 3 scorecards. Long story short, I see Romanov being able to get these takedowns and do what so many people have done to Volkov in the past, which is take him down and control him for large swaths of the fight. The other thing is that once Romanov gets you down, he's not a lay and pray guy. He's landing King Kong-like ground and pound. He's passing to mount. He's getting to people's backs. And he has a tendency to be so heavy on top that he flat backs you. And then once your back is flat on that mat, he starts to go for that forearm choke. And he's gotten it more than once. It's a very effective submission when somebody's wearing your weight, and they put their back flat against the mat there. There's no place for the head to go. And you can get that choke. And we've seen him get it a couple of times. Romanov's very, very dangerous on the ground. And people are talking about his cardio, but this is only a 3-round fight. And the gas out that happened against Marcin Tybura happened in Salt Lake City, and he 10-8'd Tybura in that first round. So that fight probably should be a draw. In addition to that, let's talk about the line, right? Because I cashed a 1-unit bet on Marcin Tybura plus 325, which meant that Romanov went off somewhere around minus 450. So he's minus 450 against Tybura when Volkov was minus 200 against Tybura and barely beat him, right? And now Romanov opens up minus 115 against Alexander Volkov, a guy that he's a much better wrestler than. I mean, we're getting him at a deep discount. That's why this line is moving. And there's just not a whole lot of evidence to suggest that Volkov is going to be able to win enough minutes on the feet in this fight to make up for how much of this fight he probably will be winding up spending on his back.
Yep. I mean, we both bet Romanov, right? Sunday. Got minus 122, missed the minus 115, also missed the minus 120, but yeah, the line is now currently minus 162 for Romanov. I think it's a great spot for Romanov. But yeah, the one concern would be that card if it does get extended, but yeah, like you said, it's only 3 rounds, should be all right. I just hated what I saw from Volkov in terms of the takedown defense and the get-up game. Once he gets taken down, he's not getting back up, and Romanov's dangerous. He has that ground and pound. He has the submission ability. So I actually think he finishes Volkov in the first round. And another bet I was looking at potentially was maybe like an under, maybe like a Romanov inside the distance, which is currently plus money, plus 125 for Romanov inside the distance. Like I think he's finished all but one of his wins, right? The one win he didn't finish was against Espino, and that was the decision where there was that low blow that made it go to the cards. I think
that's the only one, dude. Yeah. You're right.
So other than that, he's finishing everybody. So I kind of like Romanov inside the distance, plus 125 currently as well.
Yeah, and it shows Romanov on my stats with a 100% finish rate, but that's because of the way I coded the spreadsheet. And every once in a while, there's a submission to strikes. So it says TKO, submission to strike. So it labels it at both a knockout and a submission. So yeah, Romanov does have one win by decision there. So one of those, either the sub or the knockout, is not correct. But yeah, he's a finisher. Volkov is finishing more than half of his UFC wins, and he's got a 74% finish rate as a pro. So both of these guys are finishers.
Sounds good to me. That's kind of weird though. We have the fight doesn't go at -325. Romanov has a -162 favorite, but the inside the distance for Romanov is +125. That's pretty interesting there. So I kind of might be taking a look at that inside the distance prop as well. Romanov round 1 would be interesting, but yeah, I think he probably gets him out of there early. If it does get extended, it could get interesting, but I'm hoping Romanov can win at least those first 2 rounds with that wrestling, and maybe coast in that third. Any thoughts, any props you like, or are you just sticking with the money line?
I'm sticking with the money line. I've got 2.5 units on the Romanov money line at -122 here. And, I think he can win a decision. I think he could absolutely finish Volkov as well. The way that Aspinall just toyed with Volkov on the ground, getting 2 takedowns in the very first round when we had never really even seen Aspinall wrestle prior to that. He got a takedown against Andrei Arlovsky in the second round and submitted him immediately. And, I mean, obviously Aspinall's a black belt. He's got a phenomenal ground game, but so does Alexander Romanov, man. I mean, he's got vicious ground and pound, great submissions, and great wrestling, and he can pick dudes up and slam them down. So, yeah, I'm looking for Romanov to get a big win here.
Yep, should be a good buy low spot. People are down on him. He crashed everybody's parlays his last time out, and now he's at a reasonable price because last time, like you said, he was I think like you said, -500, I think, -450.
Yeah, it's a deep discount, and it's because, and there were a couple of factors there. If that fight was called a draw instead of a loss for Romanov, I think people would have looked at it a little bit differently. If people had remembered that the fight took place at altitude, and obviously a guy that lives in Moldova, in Alexander Romanov, same thing with Volkov, by the way. If they're fighting in Salt Lake City, they're not going out there for 3 weeks and to spend in Salt Lake City, where they don't speak the language, to get acclimated to the altitude. He probably thought he would perform a lot better and didn't realize how much the altitude would have an effect on him.
Yep, for sure. All right. Main event, we have a very good one. We have Petr Yan going against Merab Dvalishvili. We got Yan, 30 years old, 5'7", with a 67-inch reach. Dvalishvili, 32 years old, 5'6", with a 68-inch reach. We have Yan 2 years younger. Yan with a 1-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Yan is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He had a knockout win against Jose Aldo, a DQ loss against Aljamain Sterling, a decision win against Corey Sandhagen, decision loss against Aljamain Sterling, and then a decision loss against Sean O'Malley. Merab Dvalishvili, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Gustavo Lopez. Decision win against John Dotson. Decision win against Cody Stamann. Knockout win against Marlon Moraes. And then a decision win against Jose Aldo. Petr Yan, I could have swore he said he was going to retire. I'm not sure if that was true or not. I saw it on Twitter. But, man, I mean, unlucky his last couple fights. Had that really close decision loss to Sean O'Malley. I scored it for Petr Yan. Had that really close decision loss to Aljamain Sterling. Had that DQ loss in a fight that he was on his way to clearly winning the fight. So just some unlucky stuff here with Petr Yan. But he's taking on Merab Dvalishvili, who's I'm excited to see him in a 5-round fight. I mean, this is a guy that I've been waiting to see in a 5-round fight, because this is a guy that can go out there and push a pace in a very, very heavy pace. This guy's attempted 155 takedowns, which is just unreal. And this is the fight I'm going to want to have a ton of DraftKings lineups on. But Weezy should be a good fight here. The line kind of surprised me, honestly. I know a lot of people really love Merab Dvalishvili, and I was thinking people might be low on Petr Yan. I mean, the guy's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, but the Petr Yan line's getting completely steamed, and I agree with it. I love Yan in this matchup, but I was kind of expecting this line to be a little bit closer. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this main event?
Yeah, it's a fascinating fight, obviously, here. And, Dvalishvili has attempted 155 takedowns in only 144 minutes in the UFC cage. So you talk about, commitment to wrestling. We talked about Gamrot last week, Brady, where I think Gamrot going into the Turner fight had about 70 minutes in the cage and about 70 takedown attempts. So, we see these guys that can just absolutely wear people out with their wrestling. But the problem with wrestling is that It's something that very few people can do for 5 rounds, right? And offensive wrestling is a lot more tiring than defensive wrestling. So I've always been interested to see how Dvalishvili would do in a 5-round fight, because I don't think you can push that pace for 5 rounds. I don't think anybody can push that pace for 5 rounds. Eventually, the wrestling entries are going to become sloppy. And then, when I first saw this line, I was like, Merab's got to be some value here. But then you look at the stats and you're like, okay, I see why this line is where it is. Petr Yan, 90% takedown defense, right? And the 2 times that he did get taken down by Aljo got right to his back and then spent 4.5 minutes there. Merab Dvalishvili doesn't get to anybody's back. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that he's got 63 takedowns in 10 fights. You don't get that many takedowns unless people just keep getting up over and over again every time you take them down. In addition to that, Merab Dvalishvili has never submitted anybody in the UFC, and he's only attempting 0.31 submission attempts per 15 minutes, which means that he's attempted 3 submissions in his entire UFC career. So if Dvalishvili isn't taking Yan down and getting him to his back, and this fight stays on the feet for long periods of time, it's really hard to picture Merab outboxing Petr Yan. But then again, I remember back in the Dodson fight, because Dodson in his UFC career had 90% takedown defense, a lot of power on the feet, a lot of speed. And I was saying, this is the one. This is the guy that's going to give Merab problems. And John Dodson looked awful. And I don't know if it was just a bad performance or if it was because it's hard to be confident in your striking when you know that a motherfucker is trying 155 takedowns in 144 minutes of UFC cage time. Can you really plant your feet? Can you really sit down on your punches against Merab Dvalishvili? Even if you have 90% takedown defense, if the guy attempts 20 takedowns, he's still going to get 2 of them. If you defend the takedowns at the same rate that you have been in the past. And if he's getting these takedowns every round, is he going to win enough minutes to win this fight? The questions I need answered, Brady, and maybe you can answer them for me. Does Petr Yan look less effective on the feet because he's worried about the wrestling entries of Merab Dvalishvili? If Merab does chain wrestle here, does Petr Yan's 90% takedown defense hold up? And does Merab get frustrated if he can't get these takedowns? These are the questions I need answered.
The thing with Yan, his takedown defense is very good, and I think Merab probably does get him down. I think that's going to happen. It's just the problem with Merab. He can wrestle, but I don't know if he controls Yan in this matchup. And if he does not control Yan, it's going to get pretty ugly. This line though. I mean, I remember Yan. He was like -175, I think, when I checked the line a couple days ago. Opened up -175, went to -155, and then now he's -249. So Dvalishvili opened up +150, went to like +140, 35, and now he's +214. So yeah, I like Yan a lot, but man, I guess I missed the line here. I don't know if I want to lay -250 because this fight probably goes to decision. If it doesn't, I think Yan probably finishes Dvalishvili, which, by the way, a prop I'm going to be looking at is Yan finish only, because I feel like if Dvalishvili is not able to take down and hold down Yan consistently, it's going to get pretty ugly pretty fast. So finish only for Yan is something I'll be considering. But yeah, this fight probably goes to decision, and the judges hate Yan. The judges really hate Petr Yan, man. So I don't know. Yeah. At this point, I don't think I'm going to be laying -250 on Yan, but that finish only is something I will probably be looking at depending on the line. Any thoughts on any props, Weezy? Any thoughts on this money line? It's just been completely blown. Like a lot of these money lines have been blown out already, but this is one. This is one that's also been pretty blown out the past couple of days.
What's Merab by decision?
Merab by decision is only +285, which his money line's +214. So
yeah, I was gonna say, man, like, give me +400, and we might be talking here, but nah, man. I think Yan's takedown defense holds up. Look, the fact that this is a 5-round fight means everything. We've seen Yan just get better and better as fights go on, and he's not going to be the one offensively attempting 33 takedowns here. So, I think that if Merab, even if he does get him down in the first, even if he does get him down in the second, even if he does get him down in the third, Merab's so used to pushing a pace for 15 minutes. I just don't know if he can calm down enough in those first 3 rounds, save enough energy for the championship rounds. Because, look, if Merab shoots a sloppy takedown in the fourth and Yan gets an underhook, flips him on his back, and gets on top of him, he's going to pound his fucking head through the canvas, dude. Petr Yan's ground and pound is savage. Do you remember what he did to Jose Aldo?
That was bad, yes.
It was hard to watch. I mean, like, that tape is hard to watch. Watch a legend like Aldo just get absolutely murdered by Petr Yan, and the ref just taking way too long to stop it. Petr Yan is just such a savage. No Mercy is such an absolute perfect nickname for this dude. Yeah, I think Yan's going to get the job done here. And if this were a 3-round fight and you were giving me Merab Dvalishvili at like plus 200, I would be on board, man. I promise you. 5 rounds, completely different story.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm curious to see Merab in a 5-round fight. It's something I've been looking forward to. And we'll see. Like, this pace that is going to be crazy, I imagine, between both guys. So we're going to see which guy looks fresh in the later rounds. I kind of feel like it's going to be Petr Yan. But, yeah, lots of I don't know. Should be an interesting fight, but I don't know if I'll be touching it from a money line perspective. But yeah, that finish only prop I do like for Yan. If you do like Merab, maybe the decision only prop is something you might like, or that decision prop, but BetOnline's not giving you much for it. All right, Weezy, any final thoughts on the card, and then we'll head out of here. I'm ready to get some sleep.
Dude, the final thoughts are get some sleep, relax a little bit, take a little time to yourself. And MMA is going to be here every week for a while. So, get some sleep. And for our audience, thank you for hanging out late with us on a Monday night. Thank you for waiting an extra day for Stat Diggers. I think we're going to be stacking cash tickets like flapjacks on this card. And it starts with us doing the hard work. We did that tonight. Really looking forward to making some money this weekend, Brady.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We had a good turnout for a Monday especially, so thank you guys for watching. Leave a like on your way out. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Be sure to tune in Wednesday for the DraftKings show. We got me, Weezy, Monk, Gordo. That's always a fun time. And check out Weezy on his YouTube channel Tuesday for Just a Tip. I'm going to be getting out my prediction video probably Wednesday. And then I'll be doing a main event breakdown, I think, tomorrow. So trying to catch up. Vegas really took a lot out of me, as you know, it does. But it was a fun time. But leave a like, guys. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you guys soon. See you later.